always prided myself on my ability to sell even the most challenging properties. As one of the top real estate agents in the bustling market of New York, I had a knack for turning the unsellable into prime real estate. So, while I was tasked with selling the old Harper house on the outskirts of the city, I saw it as just another challenge to conquer. The Harper house was a sprawling Victorian mansion, its once grand facade now cloaked in ivy and shadow. The locals whispered about its dark history, stories of disappearances, madness, and death. But I dismissed them as superstitions, the kind of nonsense that could be easily overcome with the right marketing strategy. My first visit to the house was on a bright spring morning. The air was crisp, the sky clear, and the house stood silent and imposing at the end of a long, overgrown driveway. As I approached, I felt a shiver run down my spine, but I brushed it off as the chill of the morning air. The front door creaked open with a reluctant groan, and I stepped into the dimly lit foyer. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that penetrated the heavy curtains. The house smelled of age and neglect, but beneath that, there was a hint of something else, something rotten. I spent the day exploring the house, taking notes and pictures for the listing. The rooms were spacious but filled with an oppressive silence. Every so often, I thought I heard whispers, but whenever I turned, there was nothing there. The feeling of being watched was constant, but I chalked it up to my imagination. That night, I had the first nightmare. I was walking through the house, but it was different, darker, more twisted. The walls seemed to close in on me, and shadowy figures watched from the corners of the rooms. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. It was just a dream, I told myself. Just a dream. The following weeks were a blur of bad luck and strange occurrences. My car broke down repeatedly, clients canceled appointments without explanation, and I started seeing shadowy figures out of the corner of my eye. The nightmares continued, each one more vivid and terrifying than the last. One evening, as I was preparing the listing photos, the power went out. I cursed under my breath and fumbled for a flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing the room's familiar shapes, but then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Reflected in the glass of the window was a face, pale and gaunt, staring back at me. I spun around, but there was no one there. The room grew colder, and the air thickened with an oppressive presence. I felt as though I was being smothered. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into complete darkness. My heart raced as I fumbled for my phone to use its light. When I finally managed to turn it on, the figure was gone. The next day, as I left my apartment, I was almost hit by a speeding car that appeared out of nowhere. The driver seemed to have a vacant, almost possessed look in his eyes, and the encounter left me shaken. Bad luck continued to plague me. I tripped down the stairs, my bank account was hacked, and strange, ominous messages appeared on my phone, all with the same eerie warning, leave the house alone. Determined to understand what was happening, I began researching the history of the Harper house. I discovered that the house had been built in the late 1800s by a wealthy industrialist named Jonathan Harper. Harper was a recluse, known for his eccentricities and rumored dabbling in the occult. He disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and the house had been the site of numerous tragedies since then. As I delved deeper into the house's history, I found old newspaper articles detailing the disappearances of several people who had stayed in the house. One article mentioned a seance conducted by a medium who claimed the house was a portal to another world. Her warning, the house is alive and hungry. One night, driven by a mix of fear and determination, I decided to confront whatever was haunting the house. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of resolve, I returned to the Harper house. The air was thick with tension, and the house seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. As I explored the house, I began to notice strange markings on the walls, symbols that seemed to writhe and shift as I looked at them. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread settled over me. I could feel a presence closing in around me, and I knew that I was running out of time. In the basement, I found a hidden door, its wood warped and ancient. It creaked open to reveal a small, dark chamber. The air inside was freezing, and the walls were covered in strange symbols. In the center of the room was a table, and on it, a journal bound in cracked leather. I opened it, and as I read, the horrifying truth began to unfold. The journal belonged to Jonathan Harper, and it detailed his descent into madness. Obsessed with immortality, he had performed dark rituals, sacrificing his servants and eventually his own family to bind their spirits to the house. In his final entry, Harper wrote that he had succeeded in binding his own soul to the house, ensuring that he would live forever in its walls. As I read the final words, the room began to change. The symbols on the walls glowed with an eerie light, and the air grew even colder. I could hear a low, rumbling sound, like the growl of some monstrous creature. Suddenly, the walls began to close in, and I realized with horror that the house was alive and it was trying to trap me. I stumbled back, the journal slipping from my hands. The room seemed to close in around me, the walls pressing in. Harper's figure appeared in the doorway, his eyes burning with a malevolent fire, and his lips twisted into a cruel smile. "You cannot sell my house," he whispered. "It belongs to me. It will always belong to me." I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing through the empty house. The walls seemed to shift and change, making it difficult to find my way out. As I reached the foyer, the front door slammed shut with a force that shook the house. I was trapped. Desperate, I searched for another way out. I found a window and tried to open it, but it was stuck fast. I could feel the presence closing in around me, and I knew that I didn't have much time. In a panic, I grabbed a nearby chair and smashed it through the window. The glass shattered, and I climbed out, cutting myself on the shards. I didn't stop running until I was back in my car, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I looked back at the house, its dark windows like I was watching me. I knew then that I couldn't sell the Harper house. It was cursed, bound by dark magic and haunted by the souls of the damned. I had to confront the house's morbid history to reclaim my life. For the next week, my life turned into a series of unfortunate events. I found myself in minor accidents, always narrowly avoiding serious injury. My car inexplicably broke down 3 times, each repair more costly than the last. One evening, as I was crossing the street, I was almost hit by a speeding car that appeared out of nowhere. It felt as though something, or someone, was trying to push me to the brink of despair. The worst incident happened one night while I was alone in my apartment. I was cooking dinner when suddenly the stove burst into flames. The fire alarm blared, and I frantically tried to douse the flames with a fire extinguisher. As I battled the fire, I saw a reflection in the kitchen window. It was Jonathan Harper, his face twisted in a menacing grin. My blood ran cold as I realized that the hauntings had followed me home. The relentless bad luck and terrifying encounters left me with no choice. I had to end this once and for all. Determined to free myself from the house's curse, I returned to the Harper house one final time. Armed with the journal and a plan, I decided to destroy the dark artifact that bound Harper's spirit to the house. As I stepped into the house, I felt the familiar chill and oppressive presence. The air was thick with tension, and the house seemed to be waiting for me. I made my way to the basement, where the hidden chamber lay. The symbols on the walls seemed to pulse with a sinister energy, but I pressed on. I found the journal on the table, and I knew what I had to do. I grabbed a canister of gasoline from my car and poured it around the chamber, dousing the symbols and the journal. As I struck a match and prepared to set the chamber ablaze, the room seemed to come alive. The walls shook, and a deafening roar filled the air. The house was fighting back. I threw the lit match onto the gasoline-soaked floor, and the flames erupted, quickly engulfing the chamber. The heat was intense, and the fire roared with a life of its own. As the flames consumed the journal, I heard a piercing scream, a scream that seemed to come from the very walls of the house. It was Harper, his spirit finally being destroyed. I raced up the stairs, the fire spreading rapidly behind me. The house groaned and creaked as if in its death throes. I burst through the front door and stumbled onto the lawn, gasping for breath. Behind me, the Harper house was engulfed in flames, the fire lighting up the night sky. As I watched the house burn, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The curse was lifted, and Harper's spirit was finally at rest. The nightmares and bad luck ceased, and my life slowly returned to normal. I knew that I had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. Months later, as I prepared to move to a new city and start fresh, I packed up my belongings. Among the items, I found an old key, tarnished and worn. My heart skipped a beat as I realized it was the key to the Harper house. A chill ran down my spine, and I knew that Harper's curse was not done with me yet. As I drove away from the smoldering ruins of the Harper house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. In the rearview mirror, I saw a fleeting image of Harper's face, twisted in rage. I told myself it was just my imagination, the remnants of fear still playing tricks on my mind. But deep down, I knew that the Harper house and its dark legacy would always haunt me. The curse might have been lifted, but its shadow would linger, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of seemingly idyllic places. The battle was won, but the war was far from over.